well. So I saw this story, consumerreports.org says, do seed oils make you sick? And they say critics say they raise your risk for weight gain, heart issues, and more. But the science, when they use that word, the science, they're saying by the power of raw. They're saying the groupthink doesn't support those claims. So if the groupthink, the government groupthink doesn't support those claims, is what she's saying, right?
Yeah, first off, we should just start with not even the science, but the journalism. I mean, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I started my career as a journalist way, way, way back in college. And one of the first things that you're supposed to do when you're a journalist is get both sides of the story, right? You're supposed to go out and you're supposed to talk to the people who say one thing and talk to the people who say the other thing and present it to your reader and let your reader, who you presume is an intelligent person, make up their mind. Now, of course, there's room for bias there, but it's a good practice. So, does this story present anybody who says that seed oils are a problem? No. She talks to two people, Dariush Mozaffarian, who we've talked about numerous times in the past, and who has taken money and been on advisory boards for one of the biggest producers of seed oils and seed oil containing processed foods for a long time. And the other fellow is a guy named Guy Crosby, who's at the Harvard School of Public Health, where Mozaffarian was until he moved over to become the Dean of Nutrition at Tufts. So they say, if you talk to social media, you'll find out, people say all this stuff. And he actually goes so far, and I couldn't believe this, as to say, if you actually read the research, you'll find that the evidence against seed oils is incorrect or incomplete. Now, I grew up in a household where Consumer Reports was probably read, on an order of authority with the Bible. Right? Every purchase that we made, we would consult Consumer Reports, and if you had to buy a dryer or a washing machine or anything else, you knew that it was a good, objective source of evidence. They would test things. They would make sure that they were giving you all the information so that you could make the best possible decision. I've always turned to Consumer Reports for major purchases like that. So I was very disappointed to see them not even following the basic standards of journalistic practice here, right? They don't talk to anybody who's on the other side of the story. And fair enough if they don't want to talk to anybody who's, a social media personality, like I suppose I could say myself or you or a bunch of other people come to mind. But there are a lot of researchers out there that they could have talked to, and they didn't bother to do that either. So right off the get-go, we've got a big problem here.
So what is their basic overall claim to say there's no the science? They don't say scientific evidence doesn't support it. They say the science, that little power play that subconsciously manipulates audience folks to want to submit if they're not clever in their discernment of what these terms mean,
Yeah, well, whenever they say the science, you should probably grab hold of your wallet because, unfortunately, especially when a journalist does it, it seems too often nowadays they are trying to snow you. Right. So let's go back to Mozaffarian's comment. But if you actually read the research, you'll find that the evidence against seed oils is incorrect or incomplete. Well, we can go read a 2011 paper that was written by Dariush Mozaffarian. And in that paper, he looked at all these different types of foods and the effect that they had on people's obesity. Now, we all know, or we all should know by now, that obesity is one of the biggest health problems in the United States, and that it's associated with just about every other bad thing that can happen to you: cancer, heart disease, diabetes, on and on and on. So they were trying to figure out what are the most fattening foods. This is Dariush Mozaffarian. If you actually read the research, he said, well, his paper with his name at the beginning of the author list says the most fattening food in the United States is potatoes fried in seed oils. But if you have potatoes that aren't fried in seed oils, they're not obesogenic to the same degree. In fact, potatoes fried in seed oils are several times more likely to make you obese than anything else you can eat.
Wow.
So, okay, Dr. Mozaffarian, and he is a doctor, by the way, a cardiologist. I've looked at the research. I've looked at the research with your name on it, and it says that these are the most harmful things that we can eat, judged by the standard of how likely are they to make you put on weight. So where are we supposed to go from somebody who makes a claim like that and is ignoring his own published research to make that claim?
Right.
So then we're left with his former colleague, Guy Crosby, who tells us that, these things are healthy, you don't need to worry about it, nothing to see here. Well, once again, let's go find Professor Crosby's own writings. He wrote back in May 2018 a paper called "Do Cooking Oils Present a Health Risk?" And shockingly, he finds that they do. He says they do.
So
he talks about how you are the best thing that you can do is use oils that are low in linoleic acid because they're less likely to turn into toxic chemicals when you cook with them.
So why is he saying that they don't cause problems? I don't understand.
What happened? I mean, it's not like since 2018 anybody's changed their mind about these things. I mean, I have a paper in front of me written by an expert in how food changes when you heat it from 2020, talking about how dangerous these aldehydes are and how, thanks to his research and others, people are coming to more and more of a realization that these aldehydes, these chemicals in our foods are very toxic. One of the topics that he discusses is the problem of lung cancer, right? I mean, we all know what causes lung cancer, right? The government tells us all the time that smoking causes lung cancer, and everywhere you go, you're told not to smoke. You're told that, you should tell your friends not to smoke because it causes lung cancer. Fine. Nobody should smoke. Smoking causes lung cancer. But what we never hear is, although oddly enough, folks like this will sometimes say, oh, by the way, frying isn't good for you. And then they kind of ignore the mechanisms of why frying isn't good for you. But there's another leading cause of lung cancer.
What's that?
Lung cancer from cigarettes mostly occurs in men, and it's going down all around the world because everybody knows that smoking causes lung cancer. But the other kind of lung cancer mostly occurs in women, and it's going up all over the world. In fact, in Asia, where it's most common, 90% of the women with lung cancer have this other type of lung cancer. And this is the type of lung cancer that you get from frying with seed oils.
Mm.
So why don't we hear about this? Why aren't these? Why is Consumer Reports, who would never tell you to smoke cigarettes, not doing a decent job of saying, oh, the World Health Organization warns us that cooking oils are a probable cause of lung cancer in humans?
Right.
That's not some social media source. That's the World Health Organization.
So why are we hearing this guy say this? Why is he being a double talker here? I don't understand it.
Yeah, well, I am unfortunately not a mind reader. I don't understand it either. But
who's paying his bill?
We need to beg your pardon?
I don't know who's paying his bills. We need to look into that.
Well, we know who's paying Darius Mozaffarian's bills because he's got to disclose it in his papers, right? We know that he's been taking money to publish. I mean, that 2011 paper that I mentioned was, again, one of the funders for the paper was Unilever, who was once one of the biggest manufacturers of seed oils and is now one of the biggest manufacturers of processed foods using seed oils. And in that paper, they misrepresented what was happening. They said that the difference between a fried potato and a regular potato was that the carbohydrate content goes up when you fry it. Well, that's just ridiculous. I mean, if you add fat to a potato, you're not making it higher in carbohydrates. You're making it higher in fat, obviously. You don't need to be the dean of the School of Nutrition at Tufts University to figure that one out.
Right.
So there, I think there's a pretty clear conflict of interest. As far as the other fellow in this article, Professor Crosby, he's published so little stuff that it's hard to tell if he has a similar conflict of interest.
He says, Professor Crosby of Harvard says in this article, cooking with seed oils at home isn't an issue. It's just the restaurants and factory deep fryers. That's the toxic stuff. Is that true?
Well, according to Martin Grootveld, who has been studying this stuff since 1994, you actually have to worry more about frying at home than you do a deep fryer, and the reason for it is very simple. When you're frying in a frying pan, it's very shallow, and these fats are very susceptible to damage from oxygen. And because it's shallow, you just have a thin layer of fat. They're exposed to even more oxygen, and they generate even more of these toxins than they do in a deep fryer. And in the Asian research, where oddly enough, most of this research is not coming from the United States, it's coming from Asia, where this is a recognized health problem. They've actually tested, they collect the vapor that comes off these oils, like peanut oil or soybean oil, and then they either give it to animals or they give it to cell cultures, and they see what happens to the cell cultures. And the vapor from these heated oils, even if they're heated the same way you do it in your kitchen, are highly toxic.
Wow.
And they've looked at cooks. The Chinese military, of all people, did a study where they looked at cooks cooking in Chinese kitchens, Chinese military kitchens, and they found that the amount of cooking that they did, the amount of stir-frying, a lot of Chinese cuisine is frying with these oils, was directly related to genetic damage that they were suffering from. And the two biggest causes of this genetic damage that they found in this paper were smoking and cooking with seed oils.